Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name is Rory Paquette. I am, as always, your very grateful host. Grateful to be here. Grateful to be able to doing this for a living, and grateful that every one of you turns out and listens to these podcasts every time we put them out. Our YouTube is growing finally, which is great. Now I've been able to put a little more emphasis on that, and our audio podcast is still crushing it. So when we made the move to 5 days, you folks jumped right in and stayed with us, and I am grateful for that. Thank you so much. If you're not out there doing what you're doing, then I'm not over here doing what I'm doing. So thank you for making all this possible, and I'm going to keep trying to bring you good content. We've talked a lot about the state of things in this world. Things have gotten very interesting lately. This is not a political podcast, so we aren't going to get into that kind of thing, but we are going to talk about how the world, and the world at large, impacts men, impacts husbands and fathers, and in this case today, how it impacts young men. Um, Today's young men, I've said before, are in a crisis, but I'm seeing some trends. And, as a father of two young men who are in this category, I get to see it up close and personal. And I wanted to share with you a couple of traits that I'm seeing, a couple of behaviors that I'm noticing, and a few things that the powers that be may need to stand up and take notice of. And also, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but that today's younger women need to stand up and take notice of. The young men today are no longer desperate. They're not desperate for love and affection. They can get just about every need they have met on the internet, except that personal connection. And so I want to talk about that a little bit today. What are these young men doing to satisfy the one thing they can't get on the internet? That personal interaction in all phases of their lives. And what are they very, very willing to do without, live without, forsake in order to achieve their goals? Let's talk about that for a minute. Today's young men are, I believe, more goal driven than ever before. Now, you'll have a lot of people who will disagree with me on that statement right off the bat because everybody wants to say that Gen Z is, lazy or Gen Z doesn't want to work. And I've been guilty of this. I mean, in the past, I've said some things like that. It's before I really started figuring it out and before I paid real close attention to my boys. I've been spoiled in this way because both my boys are very hard workers. They both learned work ethic from my wife and I. And so they've always pursued their goals, but they've done it through hard work. They've done it through building businesses or activities, building their bodies. So they've never they've never sat back and just been lazy. So when I see other young men who are out there and they're not real interested in maybe a grind or making money or whatever it is, the natural assumption is to take our values as Gen Xers and put them out there on these Gen Zers and then evaluate them. And that's how we end up calling these Gen Zers lazy. And I've been guilty of this, like I said. But as I've watched this group of people, and again, my boys are involved in it, so I get a front row seat, not just with them, but with their acquaintances and their friends and their teams that they're on and that they're building and that they run. People that manage them that are their age and that they manage that are also their age. there are there are some exceptional young men in this category right now. And I think by and large, they've just simply made up their minds that they're not going to put up with a bunch of crap. So let's get into it. And as we do, let me take a quick pause for a sip of our preferred beverage. Y'all know we got to pay the bills with our sponsor here. Oh, good stuff. Let me get one more of those. Excellent, excellent, excelente. You know what it is, folks. If you're a friend of the program, it is Freedom Hill Coffee. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. They do all the right things for all the right reasons. They brew a mean bean. They support veterans, which is why we support them. You all know how important veterans are to the Power Man podcast and to me personally. Folks, go check them out at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Freedom Hill Coffee, good stuff. Check them out. Tell them Power Man sent you. You will not be sorry. Let's get one more sip of that. So back to this. Three things that I've noticed about our young men, Gen Zers today, in no particular order. The first of which is that they want what they want. And it's not what we wanted. When I say we, I mean Gen Xers. And to some degree, millennials also. But I'm not going to speak for a group that I'm not a part of. I'm going to speak for the Gen Xer crowd. And we grew up with that work ethic of, you and that soldier mentality. You go to school, you learn, you go to college if you can. If you can't, you go to work. That's really what we did. If you go to college, you learn, and then you go to work. So it's one more step. The idea is you go out and you work and you grind and you spend the first 40, 50 years of your life working. And you hope that you can spend, 10 or 15 at the end of it, enjoying retirement and relaxing and providing for the generations that come after you. So that really has been life for so many of us. And the the group that's out there now, they don't subscribe to that plan. They don't like the work yourself to death and then die early plan. They have rejected it wholeheartedly. And they've rejected it from what I can see in one of two ways. They either say, I'm going to go grind like no one's ever seen while I'm young, meaning for 5 years or so in my 20s, and I'm going to build and invest and grow so that I'm not retiring at 65. I mean, these guys want to retire at 30. They're not joking. They want to be home with their kids. They want to crush it now, have kids when they're done, and enjoy life. They watched us kill ourselves. They watched us give our loyalty and our life force to our jobs in the name of providing. And they watched all of us in one way or another get absolutely screwed. Over the last 10, 15 years, I've watched, the Enrons and the the different presidencies and, the economy and, everything that's come along. I've watched gas prices go through the roof and destroy households. I've watched foreclosure crises, just crush regions. And the American dream just blew up on all of us. And these young men watched their parents have everything they believed in just crumble before their very eyes. And they watched those of us who were, 55 years old have to go and, work manual labor, really tough, physically hard jobs just to be able to survive. They watched all of that happen. And they've decided, not me, not me at all. And they're like, look, I'm not gonna get into this. I'm gonna go ahead and crush now. There's a second group who saw all the same things and thought all the same thoughts, but came up with a different conclusion. And their conclusion has led them to be labeled lazy by us in the Gen X field. No one would look at my boys, for instance, who are in the first category for sure, and call them lazy. I mean, between the two of them, they're each working over 60 hours a week. One's doing a full-time job, a part-time job, and school. The other one is running a team and working, handling 40 or 50 guys. And it's putting in hours that I can't even dream about traveling around the country. So, I mean, no one would ever look at them and use the word lazy. They're part of that group A. But group B has the same belief system. They witnessed the same things. They were influenced by the same issues with watching us, Gen X, crumble. And they simply came to a different conclusion. You see, their goals are I'm not going to get hung up on money. I'm not going to worry about buying a huge house so that everybody can go, oh, look at your huge house. I'm not going to worry about buying a brand new car if I don't need a brand new car. They're perfectly content to live in a small apartment and have roommates to keep their costs down and drive, older used cars and not wear name brand clothes so that they can have quality of life. And that's it. They've basically said, look, I only have so many years on this planet. I'm not going to grind and kill myself for some future benefit. I'm going to enjoy myself now. That's it. And I'll work whatever job I can get. And if the job doesn't like me and wants to get rid of me, I'll go find another one. I don't need to make $100,000 a year. I just have to pay my bills, have enough left over to spend time with my friends, and enjoy this life I've been given. And as Gen Xers, we look at the one and we go, wow, they're doing everything that we should have done. And we look at the other and they're going, wow, that's a totally different lifestyle than anything I've ever seen. It can't be correct, can it? It can't be okay, is it? And we end up shaking our head. We approve on one because it matches our old tapes in our head that say, well, you must work, you must grind. But then we marvel at it and go, but wait a minute, you're investing money at 20? You're buying properties, you're joining investment clubs, you're working so hard that you don't care, how much it hurts right now because you're just out there killing it. Um, we can sort of understand the first group, and the second group we end up condemning as the bad ones, right? Folks, there's nothing wrong with either group. And frankly, I think both groups of Gen Zs have it figured out better than we did as Gen Xers. And that's tough. That's a tough thing to say because what we tried to do all along the way, and what many of us are still trying to do today, is have it both ways. We wanted to have all the money and the big house and the car and everything else, but we didn't want to have to work 1,000 hours. And we wanted to have the quality time and be there for our kids and be at the games and everything else, but we didn't want to do without and be embarrassed by how we looked or what we owned. These two groups of young people don't care what anyone thinks of them. And if that's not one of the most healthy things in the whole world, then I don't know what is. I've come to really respect Gen Z, Group A, and Group B because at the end of the day, they are both living true to their own goals. The fact that they don't care about the things that we thought we had to care about is upsetting. It upsets the apple cart. It makes us feel uneasy. But folks, when you look at us as Gen Xers, where are we all? The ones of us who have been able to maintain the house, maintain the car, work the hours, not get the second job, not start our own company, the only way we've done it is to survive on revolving credit. These kids today don't care about that. They're not slaves to the perception of others, so they don't need to run up their credit. A lot of these young people have shut off credit altogether. They understand they have to have a credit score in order to live because, that's how we've been going for a long time as a country. Won't be long before we unfortunately join the Eastern European nations and have barcodes in our arms telling everybody what our value is. But I digress. These young people are facing this situation. Um, so that's the first thing. The second thing that I want to talk about is um, they are much more healthy. Both groups. Both groups are either working out in gyms or they're working out at home or they're walking or they're eating better. You know, it, this group of people is not just having the bag of chili and cheese Doritos and a Coke in the morning because they're working themselves to death. They're just not. They're much more health conscious than we ever were as Gen Xers. Some of that is culturally, and some of that is, social media and whatnot, because, everybody out there is fit. Some of it is, hormones in the milk, I'm sure, but a lot of it is knowledge and technology and information. They know more than we ever knew about how to eat. They can eat cheaply and very healthy. In our world, eating cheap meant, well, I guess I'm having, ramen noodles, which are so bad for you. I can't even believe it. I didn't know that early on. That was a cheap meal for me for a long time. Didn't realize what it was doing to me. Um, these folks are much more health conscious. And what that also means is that whether they're in group A or group B, they're doing better health wise than we ever dreamed. So they're not going to be sitting here in their 40s and 50s like we are here in Gen X, where if we bend over the wrong way to pick up a towel, we're going to throw our back out for a week. They're much better off than we ever were as younger people in terms of their health. And no matter which lifestyle they're choosing to lead, it's much more healthy. The last thing I want to point out about this is, especially, and I'm talking about the men now, young men, they're not slaves to women and to their desires. When I was younger, and I know I speak for most, if not all, Gen X men, we were driven almost in total by our desire to um, be with a woman, to find that girlfriend that would become the wife, to, let's be honest, to have sex, to have physical interaction. It was what drove us. And we sacrificed so much in order to get it. Many of us accepted being treated very badly as men, as human beings, because we prioritized our need for female companionship above all else. Now, my boys, one's married, one's engaged, they do prioritize that, but they're following an example. They are out there, and they're much more the exception than the rule. What I'm seeing right now with young men, by and large, is that that's very rare. They are not prioritizing a relationship with a woman over anything else. They're not prioritizing it over their work if they're in group A, and they're not prioritizing it over their leisure activity and their friends and their social lives if they're in group B. They're just not. They're tired of the games. They've watched it, they've seen it, they know what it's about. They've heard all the family court stories. I can't tell you how many young men I talk to on a regular basis that say, if I get married, then what happens if I get divorced? I lose everything. And I can't see my kids. And the courts destroy me. Why would I ever want to do that? These are real statements by real young men that really do exist. Folks, they're fed up. So what we're looking at here, when you break it down to brass tacks, as Gen Xers, we look at this and we try to downplay all of it because we want to think that we had it all figured out. We're trying to say that we had it all figured out through all of the problems that we have in our lives, whether it be financial or health or career or spiritual. I mean, most of the men that I talk to that are Gen Xers are searching for something because we didn't get it earlier, because our lives that we chose to lead were lacking in that. Most of the men that I talk to in the Gen X realm, many of whom I work with, devoted their lives to women, for better or for worse. And even when they were being treated very, very badly, they did what men are supposed to do, and they stuck it out for the sake of the kids. I deal with many men who have been through divorce. You guys have all heard this. And those men have horror stories to tell. And many regret ever going down that path, you know? So when young men today say, look, I do want to have kids, but I'm going to wait until, depending on the group you're in. If you're in group A, you're going, I'm going to wait until I have the money I need so that I don't have to go out there and work 60 hours a week while I have my kids. And if they're in group B, they're going, I'm going to go have all the fun I can have. I'm going to travel. I'm going to, look around. I'm going to, sleep on somebody's couch, and couch surf for a while and, see things and experience things and have fun. And when I'm done with that, then I'll find somebody and then I'll have kids. It's crazy if you're a Gen Xer to look down at that and think it's okay. The message that I have for you today after pointing all this out, and I will stop blabbing, is that I've noticed all these things. And the reason that I'm telling you about them today is because I think it's a different way of looking at the Gen Z situation. And I think it's a way to appreciate the fact, and this is tough for Gen Xers to handle, but it's a great way to appreciate the fact that we may be looking at the single most empowered, healthy, and well-adjusted group of young men that we've ever seen. Let that sink in for a minute. They're not carrying any of the crap that we Gen Xers carry around in terms of guilt and, what everyone else thinks of us and perception. And they're having to, overextend through credit and have a life that looks one way on the outside and doesn't look that way on the inside. These people, these young men today, are who they are. They have the goals they have, and they're unabashedly going after them. And they don't care what the rest of us think. I'm not sure there's a healthier way to live your life than that. So my message to all the rest of my Gen X dads out there and Gen X men who are not yet dads or, still hoping is let's not judge these guys. Let's take a step back and see what we can learn from them. Because in the end, and for better or for worse, everything they're doing today, they learned from us. They either learned, I want to be this man, or they learned, I don't. And for better or for worse, we were the teachers and they were the students. I think it's time to reverse that role, gentlemen. I think it's time to look at these young men today and go, where have I gone wrong? And what can I learn from them? Think about that just a little bit. You have value. You're worth it. And you're worth taking a hard look at yourself and trying to figure out where it is we went wrong. Gentlemen, I love you. You guys can do it. You're worth it. You just have to believe it. Until next time.